You won't stop laughing at this. In a world where everything's up for debate, comedians are the rare voices willing to poke at sensitive topics, driving discussions that most people shy away from. Comedy, after all, is about saying the unsayable, and lately they've become crucial in pushing back against woke talking points. Today we're covering some of those moments, and you definitely want to stick to the very end because you won't believe what Bill Burr said about body positivity. But before I go on with the video, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more discussions just like this.
But there's a more important reason that I would stop doing comedy right now. And this reason is the real reason that's been percolating, and it really is the crowd, not you. I'm talking about the crowd on the big stage. It's too hard to entertain a country whose ears are so brittle and so sensitive. The whole country is turned into...
Comedy's definitely taken a turn, and not in the best way. These days, it's like comedians are carefully choosing every word, constantly weighing what might set off a backlash. Humor used to be about pushing boundaries and saying the things everyone else was too afraid to say, but now? Well, even the lightest, most innocent jokes are put under a microscope, and if a joke steps even slightly outside of acceptable lines, someone somewhere will find a reason to be offended, which reminds me of a Jordan Peterson quote where he says,
"Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive."
What he said becomes infinitely more important when we are talking about comedy because it isn't just about getting laughs, it's about making us think and see the world in a little different way. Great comedy takes a real-life issue and presents it in a way that surprises us, challenges our perspective, and sometimes makes us a bit uncomfortable. That's exactly what Bill Burr did during one of his shows as he took on the topic of abortion and put an interesting twist on it.
Pro-choice always made sense to me because I don't like people telling me what to do. And I was just like, it's your body. Who the f*** am I to tell you what to do with your body? So that always made sense, all right? However, I still think you're killing a baby. See? That's where it gets weird. It's not a baby yet. That's what they say, which may or may not be true. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But I'll tell you, my gut tells me that doesn't make sense. It's not a baby yet. That would be like if I was making a cake and I poured some batter in a pan and I put it in the oven, and then 5 minutes later you came by and you grabbed the pan, you threw it across the floor, and I went, what the f***, you just ruined my birthday cake? And then you were like, well, that wasn't a cake yet. It's like, well, it would have been. If you didn't do what you just did, there would have been a cake in 50 minutes. Something happened to that cake, you cake murdering son of a...
The genius of this analogy is that it sidesteps the usual highly charged language of the abortion debate. Instead, Burr takes something as simple and relatable as a cake, flipping it into a hilarious but biting commentary on one of the most divisive topics out there. It's comedy that forces the audience to think, to laugh, and maybe even to reconsider their own views without him ever getting preachy. This is a classic example of how comedy can be more than just jokes. It's a tool to challenge social norms. He doesn't tell people what to think, but instead puts forward a relatable analogy, leaving room for people to laugh and maybe take away something meaningful. Andrew Schulz is also a master of this, and he points out some of the absurdity of the feminist movement in a hilarious way.
Women timed the fight for equality brilliantly. Right? I mean, brilliant. 5,000 years, men, we were lions and tigers and hunting buffalo, and women were like, we'll just pick the berries. You guys got that. That's, you guys, all right. You guys are brave. Look at, wow, so courageous. Look at you hunting that buffalo. Second they put air conditioning in office buildings, women are like, we want equality.
Andrew's joke doesn't outright discuss feminism. Instead, it uses humor to touch on how social roles evolve alongside conveniences and changing environments. He's essentially saying that as life gets easier, people are more likely to start questioning their roles, and the division of labor we once took for granted. It's both tongue-in-cheek and in classic Schulz-style clever social commentary. And you know it's true because you don't see modern-day feminists asking for equality in labor-extensive jobs or when being conscripted for war. They just want equality when it comes to comfortable and the C-suite type jobs. In true comedian fashion, Schulz walks that fine line, delivering laughs while subtly asking his audience to think about the shifts in our society's expectations and dynamics. His punchlines reveal a modern reality. It's the little comforts in life that inspire the biggest changes. Speaking of feminism and equality, Bill gave his 2 cents on the topic of equal pay in sports, and it was pretty epic.
I saw a woman a couple months back, professional soccer player, right? She goes on to ESPN or one of these sports channels, and she starts going like, I don't understand. How come female athletes don't make as much as male professional athletes? Right? And all of these men had to sit there and act like they didn't know what the answer was. They had to sit there like dumbfounded, like, oh, I don't know. Why is that? That is a conundrum. I have no idea. Literally, I'm sitting at home screaming at the TV because you don't sell any tickets. Nobody is going to women's soccer games. You're playing in a 20,000 seat arena. 1,500 people show up. That's not a good night. The promoter lost his on that gig. I'm not saying no professional female athletes, Serena Williams, the women in the UFC, but nobody's watching your sport.
That's Economics 101, served up in a comedy show, so the audience got a good bang for their buck. But jokes aside, while woke culture often argues that women in sports make less due to inequality, the reality is different. The truth is, pay always mirrors what each athlete, team, or league can bring in terms of revenue and viewership. In men's sports leagues, the massive audiences, lucrative TV deals, and heavy sponsorships bring the billions. Naturally, players see a slice of the pie. Meanwhile, many women's sports leagues, who in fact get higher percentages than male sports leagues, though growing, still don't generate the same revenue. This isn't due to a lack of skill or dedication, but simply the current demand and cultural popularity. We actually made an in-depth video covering that exact same topic, so make sure to watch it after this one. Bill also blasted the woke culture on how they changed our perception of topics that weren't issues just a few years ago.
Talking to the ladies, talking about body issues. They're always talking about body issues. That's the dumbest one ever. When they talk about Hollywood, going like, Hollywood, they create these impossible body images, blah, blah, blah. That whole thing, the plus-size actress, right? The fatties, That's like a big thing. They're sick of being treated like fat people. I don't know what it is they're doing. They're going on the cover of magazines now, just like showing how fat they are, wearing a little bit amount of clothes. And everybody's like hyping them up, like, oh my God, that's so brave. That's so courageous. I'm not saying it doesn't take balls, but that's a bit of an overreach with the word brave, right? Like, what am I supposed to do if I ever see a fireman running out of a building carrying a baby and an old lady? Am I gonna sit there like, oh my God, you're like a fat actress that takes her shirt off to do a magazine shoot to promote the movie she's in. Now look, I know you're not supposed to make fun of fat people. I understand, all right? I don't know why, though. Why? They're not a race. They're not a religion. It's totally curable. Eat an apple and go for a walk.
That is really a topic no one else talks about in mainstream comedy, but when woke people fail to realize that comedy doesn't just pop out of nowhere, it's rooted in real life, in the things people think, feel, and go through every day. When comedians craft their material, they're tapping into subjects that already exist in society, that float around in the back of everyone's minds, and experiences that are shared but sometimes unspoken. So when woke culture jumps in and calls a joke offensive, it's not just about the joke itself. It's almost like they're trying to silence something bigger, a broader reflection of society's truths, frustrations, and even its ironies. Comedians play an important role by holding a mirror up to society, and yes, it's sometimes uncomfortable, but when people start policing comedy, it's like they're trying to sanitize reality itself, to remove anything that might be too real, too raw, or too complex. But what are your thoughts on this? Let's get the conversation rolling in the comments down below. Oh, and don't forget to share it with your friends so they can stay in the loop.